What if I told you that a man with only 5 years of formal education became so wealthy that he owned one out of every $9 in the entire United States? A man who started with a borrowed $100 boat and ended up controlling the most powerful transportation network America had ever seen. This is the extraordinary story of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the Commodore who transformed from a simple ferryman into the railroad king of America. Stick around, because what you're about to discover will change how you think about ambition, strategy, and building an empire from absolutely nothing. Cornelius Vanderbilt was born on May 27, 1794, in Port Richmond, Staten Island, New York. His parents were poor. His father worked as a ferryman and farmer, struggling to make ends meet. Young Cornelius had almost no formal education, dropping out of school at just 11 years old to work on the waterfront with his father. But even as a child, Vanderbilt showed something different, a fierce determination and an eye for opportunity that would define his entire life. At 16 years old, Vanderbilt made a deal that would change everything. He borrowed $100 from his mother, a significant sum at the time, and purchased his own boat. His mission was simple but ambitious: ferry passengers and cargo between Staten Island and Manhattan. What happened next was remarkable. The young Vanderbilt worked tirelessly, often for 16 hours a day, and paid back his mother's loan within just a few months. This wasn't just luck, it was the beginning of a pattern: spotting opportunities, working harder than anyone else, and delivering results. During the War of 1812, Vanderbilt secured a government contract to supply military forts around New York Harbor. His reputation grew as someone who was competent, reliable, and offered fair prices. By 1817, recognizing the potential of new steam technology, Vanderbilt partnered with Thomas Gibbons in a steamship business called the Union Line. This was his business school. Working for Gibbons for over a decade, Vanderbilt learned how to manage large commercial operations and became skilled in legal matters and business strategy. In 1829, at age 35, Vanderbilt struck out on his own again. He started building his own fleet of steamships and operating ferry lines around New York. His business tactics were ruthless but effective. He would slash prices so low that competitors couldn't survive, intentionally losing money in the short term to dominate the market in the long term. His aggressive fare wars earned him numerous enemies, but they also earned him something more valuable: dominance. In some cases, his rivals would actually pay him thousands of dollars per month just to stop competing with them. By the 1840s and 1850s, Vanderbilt had become a millionaire many times over. During the California Gold Rush, he launched a steamship service transporting prospectors from New York to San Francisco via Nicaragua, a route that was faster than the established Panama crossing. This venture alone earned him over $1 million per year, equivalent to about $26 million today. By age 45, Vanderbilt was already incredibly wealthy, owning and operating more than 100 steamships and employing more workers than any other business in America. People started calling him the Commodore, a naval title that reflected his dominance of the waterways. But here's where the story gets truly fascinating. In the 1850s and early 1860s, while most people would have been content to retire and enjoy their wealth, Vanderbilt saw something others missed. The future wasn't in ships, it was in railroads. Steam locomotives were revolutionizing transportation, connecting cities and opening the vast American interior in ways ships never could. The railroad industry was chaotic, disorganized, and full of opportunity for someone with Vanderbilt's vision and capital. In 1863, at the age of 69, when most men of his era were already dead or long retired, Cornelius Vanderbilt made a bold decision. He sold off his shipping empire and dove headfirst into railroads. His first major acquisition was the New York and Harlem Railroad, a line that most people considered worthless and poorly managed. But Vanderbilt saw what others didn't. It was the only railroad that entered the center of Manhattan. He recognized its strategic value for transporting goods in and out of America's largest city. Vanderbilt bought up massive amounts of stock until he owned the line outright and became its president. Then he went to work. He improved service, upgraded the equipment, standardized procedures, and most importantly, he understood the power of connections. Unlike the steamship business, where you could chart your own course, railroads operated on fixed infrastructure. Success meant controlling connected routes and creating seamless networks. Empire. What happened next was a masterclass in strategic empire building. In 1864, Vanderbilt took control of the Hudson River Railroad, which ran parallel to the Harlem line between Albany and New York City. Then came his boldest move yet. He set his sights on the New York Central Railroad, one of the most important rail lines in America. During a brutal winter when the Erie Canal was frozen over, Vanderbilt played hardball. He refused to accept the Central's passengers or freight, effectively cutting them off from connections to western cities. The railroad had no choice but to capitulate. They sold Vanderbilt controlling interest, and he consolidated his grip on rail traffic from New York City to Chicago. In 1869, he added the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway to his portfolio. In 1870, he consolidated two of his key lines into the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad, creating one of the first giant corporations in United States history. For the first time in American history, passengers and freight could travel seamlessly from New York to Chicago on a single, integrated system. Vanderbilt's approach transformed the railroad industry. He standardized procedures and timetables across his lines, increasing efficiency and decreasing travel times. He focused on upgrading infrastructure while keeping fares competitive. He understood that controlling strategic choke points and key routes was worth more than owning scattered, disconnected lines. This wasn't just about making money, it was about reshaping the geography of the United States itself. In 1869, Vanderbilt commissioned the construction of Grand Central Depot on 42nd Street in Manhattan. Completed in 1871, this magnificent terminal served as the hub for all his rail lines. He even sunk the tracks into a tunnel beneath 4th Avenue, which later became the elegant Park Avenue. The depot would eventually be replaced by the iconic Grand Central Terminal in 1913, but Vanderbilt's vision laid the foundation. Vanderbilt's rise wasn't without fierce opposition. One of the most infamous battles was the Erie Railroad War against the notorious Jay Gould and Jim Fisk. Vanderbilt tried to buy controlling interest in the Erie Railroad, one of the largest rail lines in America. But as he accumulated shares, Gould and Fisk responded by illegally printing more stock, diluting Vanderbilt's holdings in what became known as watered stock. The battle raged in newspapers and courtrooms. Gould even resorted to bribing the New York State legislature to legalize their fraudulent shares. It was one of the few battles Vanderbilt lost, but characteristically, he didn't let it stop him. He moved on to other opportunities, building his empire through other strategic acquisitions. While his quarrels with most businessmen were never personal and many became his friends later in life, Gould and Fisk remained exceptions. By the time of his death on January 4, 1877, at age 82, Cornelius Vanderbilt had accumulated a fortune of approximately $100 million. To put this in perspective, if calculated as a share of the nation's GDP, his wealth would be worth between $143 billion and $233 billion in today's money, making him one of the 2 or 3 richest Americans in history, alongside John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. Unlike many of the Gilded Age tycoons who followed him, Vanderbilt lived relatively modestly. He didn't build grand mansions for himself, though his descendants certainly would. His one extravagance was buying racehorses. In 1873, near the end of his life, he made a surprising decision. He donated nearly $1 million, an astronomical sum at the time, to establish Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. For a man with almost no formal education who had shown little interest in philanthropy throughout his life, this gift was remarkable. Vanderbilt left the bulk of his fortune to his son, William Henry Vanderbilt, who had been actively involved in the business and proved himself capable. William doubled the family fortune within just 8 years. His other children and wife received smaller but still substantial bequests. His son Cornelius Jeremiah, whom he regarded as unreliable, received only a trust fund. Perhaps most remarkably, he proved that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. At age 70, when most people would be in retirement, Vanderbilt pivoted entirely from ships to railroads and built an empire that reshaped America. His name lives on not just in Vanderbilt University, but in the very infrastructure of American commerce. The man who started with a borrowed $100 and 5 years of schooling became the architect of modern American transportation. That is the power of vision, relentless work ethic, and strategic thinking. And that's the incredible story of how Cornelius Vanderbilt went from a poor ferryman's son to the railroad king of America. What amazes me most is how he saw opportunities others missed, whether it was the strategic value of a run-down railroad or the future of an entire industry. If you enjoyed learning about this fascinating piece of American history, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story about the legends who shaped our world. Drop a comment below and let me know. What do you think was Vanderbilt's most impressive business move? Was it his pivot to railroads at age 70, his strategic acquisitions, or his ruthless competitive tactics? Check out the video in the cards above where we explore more stories of self-made billionaires and empire builders. And remember, whether you're 16 with a borrowed $100 or 70 thinking about your next chapter, it's never too early or too late to build something extraordinary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.